Archangel Michael is crying loudly because you always skip him. This is not a joke. You will. You felt it before you saw it, the subtle stillness, the pause in the pulse of everything. The clouds above you folded in unnatural symmetry, like hands clasped in mourning, and when the first tear of light split the heavens, the wind howled not with rage but with grief. Archangel Michael was crying, and though your ears had long forgotten how to hear such holy sorrow, the earth did not. The trees bent unnaturally, not in obedience to wind but to the unbearable weight of divine mourning, as if every branch remembered what you swore you'd forget. A pulse throbbed in the ground below, echoing with a rhythm that didn't match your heartbeat but once did, in a time you've refused to acknowledge. The moon trembled behind torn clouds, like a witness forced to keep secrets that claw through its craters. Archangel Michael says the sky is not breaking, it is remembering. He stands at the breach, armored not in light but in silence, the kind that carries all the words you never spoke when you were called. His tears are not weakness but warnings, liquid judgment spilling from a celestial guardian too long ignored. The space between realms groaned as your name was spoken aloud, not the name you use here, not the one given by parents, but the sealed syllables carved in spirit before you took breath. That name ignited, not in praise but in protest, a brand to the angel who once carried your covenant across flaming dimensions. Michael does not cry because you are lost, he cries because you are still choosing to remain asleep. You saw something move in the split sky, a shape, winged and wounded, dragging light behind it like a torn veil. It wasn't an omen. It was memory. The kind you locked behind your ribs with rusted locks of fear and convenience. The wind carried no storm, but a summons. God says the day you were born, a trumpet did not sound. A sword was unsheathed. Every moment since has been shadowed by the war you were meant to awaken into, not escape from. But every time the silence beckoned you to remember, you drowned it in noise, even holy noise. Somewhere deep, beneath the layers you call personality and preference, something in you shuddered, a spiritual nerve twisted, shocked by the echo of your forgotten vow. You made it freely, but eternity doesn't forget what time tries to bury. And now, the sky can no longer hold what it was forced to hide. Archangel Michael says you were never a spectator in this story. You were forged as a blade, not a candle. But you chose comfort over fire, and now the fire comes for you anyway, not to destroy, but to demand. He stands above the cities of men, unspeaking, because the next sound from his mouth is either your name or your judgment. The rain that followed wasn't rain at all. It smelled of ash and oil, of burnt parchment and sealed ink. You wiped it from your skin and told yourself it was weather. But something in the depths of your spirit whispered, this is the residue of remembrance. Heaven has begun to write again, and you are not the author. Your breath caught not in fear, but recognition. As if a door inside you cracked open, one you boarded shut with prayers you never meant and choices you hoped angels wouldn't notice. But they noticed. Especially Michael, whose hand has never once dropped the blade meant for you to wield. God says there is a price for prolonged silence. When you ignore the cry of destiny long enough, even your dreams become haunted by truths trying to break through. But this is not haunting. This is summoning. And the sky has just whispered your name again, louder. The stars above realign subtly, like soldiers returning to rank. You felt a pressure in your chest, not illness but inheritance. You were marked before you were made. And now the mark glows again, against your will, because you are needed, even if you no longer know why. The crack in the heavens widened, and from its mouth, a light not made for this world poured. It bent reality, twisted time, and cast shadows you could not trace. But one shadow was clear, a silhouette with massive wings, holding something wrapped in shrouds of judgment and mercy. You knew it was for you. Archangel Michael says he has waited long enough. He does not demand apology, only action. His sword does not thirst for blood but for alignment. And the longer you resist, the more the weight of it falls on both of you. The cries of the angel shake realms, not because he is weak, but because you were once his partner in flame, and now he fights alone. You were not made for pews and platitudes. You were crafted for portals and pronouncements. And every delay tears deeper into what was once whole. The earth beneath you pulsed again. This time, it spoke, not in words but in revelation. You saw flashes of your face in places you've never been, doing things you do not remember, but every part of you knew. Your spirit did not ask how, it wept, because it knew when. God says there are consequences for forgetting who you are. Not punishments, but fractures. Not anger, but awakening. And when heaven breaks open, it's not just to remind you. It's to reclaim you. Michael raised his face to the stars, and the light that touched him bent into blue flame. You saw your reflection in that fire, aged, broken, armored, beautiful. Not the version you chose. The one you abandoned. The sky closed, but not completely. It left a tear, just wide enough for you to see, just narrow enough to demand movement. And as the final echo of Michael's cry rolled through your bones, you understood this was not a call. It was a warning. The night refused to fade. Dawn paused at the edge of the world as if waiting for permission to rise, but none came. The horizon bled rust and violet, colors scraped from a war wound deeper than memory, and overhead, the stars blinked like watchers afraid to close their eyes. You stepped forward, though no path revealed itself, only the tug beneath your ribs, like a tether pulling you into places unseen but long promised. The earth here was scorched with symbols, burned in looping runes you could almost read, if your spirit didn't flinch every time it tried. Each letter flared briefly as you passed, reacting to your presence like embers kissed by breath. The air thinned in the place between places, where sound became memory and memory became judgment. Here, every silence had weight. And you were not alone. The walls that weren't walls breathed with a pulse you had once shared, temples of time and oath long buried now cracked open like broken ribs. Archangel Michael says this is where your true battles are recorded, not in books, not in prayers, but in scars carved across dimensions. Every act of obedience etched in light. Every betrayal sealed in shadow. And your entries flicker between the two. The chambers rose without architecture, towers made of remembrance, forged from decisions you thought private. They curved like spines, like swords, like wings. You saw fragments of yourself within them, suspended in pale gold and holy fire, and behind them, something darker paced, something bound by chains you once helped lock. God says there are wars that do not cease because the soldiers forget they are at war. The battlefield shifts, but the conflict burns on, in courts of fire and oceans of judgment, and you, yes, you, once held the command of legions. Not metaphor. Memory. The cry of a horn not heard on earth echoed through your bones, and with it, the chambers stirred. Stone that was not stone groaned open, revealing corridors carved in ash and starfire. You walked, pulled by destiny's unraveling thread, and the air whispered your name in ancient dialects, some that made your blood sing, others that made your skin burn. The walls displayed images, moving and alive, of battles lost when you turned away. Not battles of flesh, but of light. Of covenant. Of souls abandoned to their own despair because the one who was supposed to speak never spoke. The one who was supposed to strike never struck. You. Archangel Michael says he fought with one arm bound because you were missing. Because your silence did not just echo, it collapsed timelines. And still, he waits for your sword to return to his hand. He does not beg. But the blood on his feathers is not his alone. You entered the central chamber, where the throne of judgment sat empty. Not because there is no judge, but because the judge waits for witnesses. You are both. You are both witness and accused. The stone beneath the throne bore your name carved beside others, some glowing, others fading, and yours, flickered. God says flickering is worse than silence. Silence he can break. Flickering is betrayal with a rhythm. It means you know. It means you remember just enough to refuse deliberately. And the heavens will not abide such rebellion forever. The air shimmered, and you saw yourself, radiant, armored, lips moving in command, a war mark across your brow. But beside that vision, another, you hear, now, muted, uncertain, wrapped in earthly comforts like bandages over purpose. The contrast nearly unmade you. Light exploded from the ceiling, a spiral descending like a blade. From it came a voice, not loud, but final. Not angry, but surgical. It did not ask. It revealed. It said that every prayer you never prayed created voids, and those voids became homes for serpents that now whisper your name in mockery. You saw the faces of souls you were meant to guard, flickering through shadow. Some wept. Some wandered. Some stared at you with hollow eyes and waited. The chains on their limbs bore links with your decisions as their source. You had no language for this guilt, because it wasn't emotion. It was law. Archangel Michael stood beside you then, taller than the chamber itself, wings folded, eyes not judging but resigned. He raised his sword slightly, just enough to reflect your face on its surface, one side glowing, the other fractured, bleeding golden ichor. You looked away. He did not. He says there is still time, but not much. The doors are closing, not in wrath, but in alignment. Heaven's clock strikes not to punish, but to protect what still can be salvaged. But you must act. You must choose. You reached out toward a sigil glowing in the center of the chamber floor, a symbol you half remembered from a dream you swore was just imagination. Your hand hovered, but trembled. Touching it would reignite the oath. And part of you still clung to the illusion that neutrality was safer. God says neutrality is the throne of cowards. He did not birth you in fire for you to become a spectator in the war of heavens. He did not wrap eternity around your soul for you to unwrap it at the feet of distraction and call it peace. The sigil pulsed beneath your palm. It sang. It screamed. It told you what it had always held, your original design. Warrior. Intercessor. Authority. And above it, light poured down again, searing the image of your true self into your mind so that you could not claim ignorance ever again. Michael turned then, wings outstretched, sword down, not in surrender, but in readiness. He would not force your hand. He would not plead. But his silence now thundered with one truth: he cannot fight your war without you. You stood at the center of the chamber, heart torn between two frequencies, the life you built and the calling you buried. And the chambers groaned again, sensing indecision. Doors began to close. The vision faded. But the mark remained on your hand, glowing faintly beneath the skin. The war has not ended. The summons has not faded. And the Archangel has stopped waiting. You felt it before it appeared, a weightless pressure behind your sternum, like a door swinging open without hinges. A scroll descended slowly in the air before you, wrapped in trembling light and sealed with the whisper of an angel's breath. It hovered with terrible stillness, as if knowing the agony of offering itself again to hands that once let it fall. It didn't speak. It didn't accuse. It simply existed, pulsing with the memory of a task assigned to you before your first breath was drawn in dust. The moment you saw it, your soul remembered the binding. And so did the heavens. Archangel Michael says the scroll bears not instructions, but inheritance. It carries the fire you were meant to release, the names you were meant to cover, the codes of movement your spirit was designed to interpret. And yet you turned your face when it came, wrapped in light, desperate to be unsealed. You see it now, though, not as parchment, but as prophecy. Your own story twisted in divine breath, waiting for the mouth it was carved for. And your silence has let it curl in holy grief, unread and aching. It did not forget you. But it began to decay in your absence. God says unread scrolls scream in the spirit realm. Their silence is not passive, it is violence. It bends the realm around them, because what is bound in them is alive. And every day you delayed was another cry from what you were born to bring into light. The scroll flickered with symbols not from earth, but older, etched in frequencies rather than ink. They stung your eyes because they once lived in your mouth. When you spoke as you were meant to. Before fear taught you the lie of disqualification. You reached for it, half aware, half resisting. It pulsed brighter, sensing recognition, but then hesitated. It moved slightly back, as if waiting for repentance not in word, but posture. You cannot touch holy things with casual hands. Not again. Not after what you chose instead. Visions erupted around you, realms where the scroll had once opened in other timelines. You saw yourself in armor, declaring justice into places drowned in silence. You saw spirits rise from ashes at the sound of your decree. But that version of you was severed, left waiting in a timeline you now ignored. God says time bends for obedience. But it knots and coils for avoidance. You cannot escape your origin without damning your future. And the scroll will not wait forever. Archangel Michael says you've misunderstood your place. You thought the scroll would control you. But you were forged to unlock it. It's not a prison. It's a key. One that opens gates only you can walk through, and behind those gates are souls screaming your name as their deliverer. The symbols writhed now, agitated. The scroll shook. It had been patient. Too long. Other angelic eyes watched from the shadows of this place between places, recording not your thoughts, but your hesitation. The heavens do not need your perfection. They need your yes. You felt it stir beneath your skin again, that name. The real one. The one you dare not say aloud for fear it will split the life you've made wide open. But the scroll knows it. It was addressed to it. And now, if you do not claim it, something else will. You stepped back instinctively. The light dimmed. The scroll began to ascend. Not in threat, but mourning. Another refusal. Another delay. It does not condemn. It retracts. And every inch it pulls away carves hollows into your purpose. God says He is not angry with you. But He is moving with or without you. The scroll is not leverage. It is a lifeline. And you are drowning, whether or not your reflection tells the truth. The scroll stopped halfway into the air, trembling like a candle in a forgotten room. One last flicker of invitation. One last gasp of memory. Your hand burned with the imprint of its seal, the mark still there from the time you touched it long ago and never followed through. You fell to your knees, but not from shame. From recognition. That even in your refusal, it remembered you. That even in your silence, it returned. That something this holy still chose to find you again. That is not mercy. That is mandate. Archangel Michael says this is your last return. The final offering of the script written for your mouth alone. Others cannot read it. Others are not permitted to touch it. Only you. If you do not take it now, it will be sealed away. Not as punishment. As preservation. The vision swelled again, harder now. You saw what will happen if you still say no. The cities that crumble because your words did not arrive. The gates that remain closed. The altars that go cold. The people who wait, and finally stop waiting. And all of it, recorded. God says heaven has held back judgment not because you were innocent, but because you were anointed. But even anointing has a window. And the window is closing. The scroll hovers in the crack between grace and consequence. The weight in the air thickened. You could hardly breathe, not from fear but from alignment. Your soul pressed against the edge of obedience like a lion behind a thin curtain. You were never small. You only convinced yourself to shrink. The scroll tilted forward, one last movement. And something inside you shifted. Not like a decision. Like a homecoming. The wind around you carried the scent of forgotten incense, the kind that only burns in the presence of destiny. You exhaled. And your fingers opened. The scroll fell gently into your hands, not with thunder, but silence so full it rang. The seals dissolved into your skin like fire folding into embers. You didn't read the words. You became them. They unlocked inside you like stars remembering how to shine. Michael bowed his head. Not in submission. In reverence. Not to you. To what had just awakened in you. The chambers trembled with the sound of chains snapping far away. Something unsealed. Something released. You held the scroll against your heart, and for the first time in years, the war paused, just slightly, just long enough, for heaven to sigh. You felt the weight before the wings appeared, a pressure like gravity uncoiling inside your chest. It was not a heaviness of burden, but the pull of what you were made to carry, pressed deep into your soul as though the heavens themselves were leaning upon you. You had denied this weight for so long that it had grown unfamiliar, an ache you thought was absence, but was the absence of your own truth. Archangel Michael says wings are not just appendages, but the measure of your covenant, the scale of your allegiance. They are the weight of the skies and the blood you vowed to shed in defense of light. To deny them is to deny the very balance you were tasked to uphold, a cosmic betrayal that rends not only heaven but earth. The sky folded once more, this time not with grief but with a quiet, terrible expectancy. The moon trembled, casting shards of cold silver across a field of burning embers. You stood alone, but the presence of wings you could not yet see wrapped around you like an invisible shroud, pressing you to remember what you had lost in forgetting. God says the weight of wings is not punishment. It is purpose made manifest, a burden chosen before birth, carried in the marrow of your bones. The wings you denied were never meant to pin you down, but to lift you, above fear, above regret, above the lies you tell yourself to sleep. You tried to flee the gravity of it. You tried to shrink your spirit to fit the cage of your own design. But wings remember. They cannot be trimmed by excuses or cloaked in denial. They beat silently beneath your ribs, whispering the truth you refuse to hear: you are not a creature of this earth, but of the skies. Archangel Michael says he has carried your wings in his hands when you could not. He has held their shape in the light of stars and wept because they were meant for you, not for him alone. His tears are not for loss, but for the delay, an ache only a warrior who loves can bear. The wind rose suddenly, howling with voices of the forgotten, the betrayed, the lost. It whipped the earth into a frenzy of dust and flame, as if the skies themselves were calling you to rise. But you stood rooted in fear, shackled by the shadows you cast inside your own mind. God says fear is the true weight you bear, the unseen chain heavier than any feathered limb. It anchors your soul to mediocrity, to silence, to the death of divine purpose. And yet, even in fear, the wings pulse beneath, waiting for the courage you once held as a birthright. The night deepened, folding around you like a cloak stitched from the fabric of doubt and despair. And in that darkness, the faintest flicker of flame ignited, not in your hands, but in your heart. A pulse, rhythmic and strong, like the beating of wings awakening from slumber. Archangel Michael's voice cut through the silence, low and urgent. He says the wings you deny are the armor you need, the light you carry, the sword you were forged to wield. They are not burdens, but blessings disguised as burdens, mysteries waiting for your surrender. You raised your hands, trembling, to where you felt the wings pressing close. And in that moment, the invisible became visible, massive, radiant wings unfolding slowly like dawn breaking through the blackest night. They shimmered with hues of storm and flame, each feather inscribed with the names of those you swore to protect. God says the wings are not yours alone. They are the voices of the angels who stood before you, the prayers of souls who believed in your promise, the fire of heaven itself. To deny them is to silence a choir centuries old. The sky cracked again, not with sorrow, but with promise. Light poured through the fracture, catching the edges of your wings and setting them ablaze with holy fire. You could no longer deny what you were. The wings did not weigh you down, they lifted you into the tempest you were born to navigate. Archangel Michael stepped beside you, his own wings wide and steady, a mirror to your awakening. He says this moment is the hinge of destiny, the point where your refusal turns to resolve, where your silence breaks into song. The weight you carried was never a burden but a call. You felt your spirit stretch with the wings, breaking the chains of doubt that had wrapped your soul like winter frost. They unfurled fully now, blazing against the dark like twin suns, and you rose, not with grace, but with fierce, trembling power. God says this is your true ascent, not a flight away from responsibility, but a rise into it. The wings are your covenant made visible, your soul's declaration. They carry the wounds of delay but also the promise of redemption. The world below shimmered, trembling under the sudden blaze of your rebirth. The wings you denied became your truth, your justice, your sword and shield. And Archangel Michael stood beside you, no longer weeping, but watching, the silent guardian of a warrior awakened at last.